3, 2, 1. You are tuned into Playful Sounds. Thanks for coming, everybody.
This is Danny Wild, and I'm Louise Curham. I feel we should actually introduce the audience.
Yeah. We've got
so there's Martin Jolly.
Martin Jolly.
And there's Bronwyn Coop.
Yep.
And on the left is Charles.
Charles.
Hi, Charles.
Thanks for coming.
And camera assistant Josh Owen.
Hi, Josh.
And the very gorgeous Joseph is lurking.
Outside.
Yeah.
Manning the dog.
He's keeping them out.
Holds at bay.
He's keeping them out.
True believers.
That's right.
It really is a really special thing you're doing here, though, Joseph.
It's very important.
It is. And the fact that we are here is what is important.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, would you like...
No, they've got one.
Everyone's got one?
Except Joseph. Thank you. Okay.
Louise, thank you
Hey.
for being my first guest.
It's a pleasure.
I found out about Louise's work probably in art school, I'd say, during a Super 8 workshop.
Fancy
Aha.
that. Art school.
In art school.
That was Martin's fault.
It was in the audience. Now, after that I actually got a bit of an interest in Super 8 and what I could do with Super 8. And I've experimented with it a bit, but since then I've kind of put it to the side because for me it's a very difficult medium to work with. It's funny because it's very beautiful and very organic, but at the same time it's, for me, infuriating because you're working for hours and hours on this one thing and then you might get it caught in a projector and it will burn. But I think, Louise, maybe you're better off to explain to the audience what Super 8 is, if people don't know, and what draws you to it.
Okay. So, Charles, do you know anything about Super 8?
Very little.
Okay. So, the most important thing to know about it is that, now Bronwyn can assist me with the dates, but 1968 is the year in which Standard 8 is half 16 mil. And so Super 8 is intimately linked to amateur and domestic, the amateur and the domestic. And that's one of the reasons that I first started to work with it. So I guess this is my opportunity to say why I started working with it. I left film school and I thought, I know nothing about how to construct an image. I know a lot about how to direct traffic and roll camera and pull focus, load film magazines, organise catering, and what else did I learn? How to roll cables, roll up lighting cables, how to do storyboards. But I really know almost nothing about how to construct an image. I was living in Melbourne at the time, in the early 90s, and that was an era where every single person I knew lived on the dole. And they were all artists. They were either actors or dancers or filmmakers or painters or sculptors or musicians. And I was the only person who had a job. Which was to do with my anxious migrant status as a new arrival from New Zealand. So I left film school and I thought, right, I don't really know anything about how to construct an image. Yeah. So I decided to, I had a friend who had a Super 8 camera and he gave it to me. It was a treasure in his family, and he most generously gave it to me. Super 8 was truly obsolete at that point. Now, I don't know if any of you guys know that Marcus Grail book called Lipstick Traces. If you don't, I highly recommend it. Marcus Grail talks about Isidore Zou, who is the 1950s French letrist. You can check out letrist cinema when you leave on Google. And Isidore Zou has this idea about decay and the importance of this moment where technology has passed just at its post-maturity cusp and it's in a state of decay. And Super 8 was at that point in about 1993 where it was in every op shop, it cost $20, was readily available in all kinds of places. So and that was around the time where Martin Scorsese, it would have been Coppola, one of those famous American directors, made his speech about the digital pen, how every school child in the future would be able to create an image with the kind of simplicity that we use a pen. And it's amazing because that is now the case. In 1993 that was not the case. Super 8 represented that opportunity to me. Surrounded by all these arty types, as I was living across the road from the Esplanade Hotel in St Kilda, I decided that I wanted also to be able to have a practice, because I watched these artists, people who'd been to art school, and they had art, they had a practice, they had a studio, and they went in there and every day they did something. I also worked closely with dancers at that time. There's one choreographer who I worked with really quite a lot. We made quite a few films together. And from that process, I also got this feeling for what it is to have a studio practice. And that's something that most filmmakers just don't have, or they didn't in the 90s. They kind of possibly could nowadays, but it's rare that you meet someone who makes something every day. So that was the other reason that I was so drawn to the Super 8, was because I felt it was something that I could really explore at low cost with low technological apparatus. And that was kind of on its own, lonely, neglected. It was in decay.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
This is a really funny story because it aligns with me, but with VHS, which I'll get into later. But
Yeah.
5 or 10 years ago, that's the kind of thing that you would find in an op shop, is the VHS player.
That's
So
right.
it's almost like the same story,
Yeah.
recycled with newer technology.
It is. So at this point, actually, you should all get up. And you should come over here. And you should just have a close look at the VHS.
Which is what we're using to record tonight.
Okay, with the VHS mixing disc.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to
Two,
put some,
actually.
you're going to put some funky lines on there, Danny?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm feeding it back into itself, which has all kinds of...
Yeah, isn't it? Late 80s.
So these kind of colours and effects are, they look completely different to what Louise's output looks like, but it's the same, I guess, the same neglect of...
Countdown comes in there.
Countdown, yeah.
Hey Louise, can I ask a question?
Yes.
When you picked up the Super 8 in the 1990s, how hard was it to actually get it? Because Super 8 is a medium that has to actually be developed. And when you say it had been abandoned, was that partly because it was becoming more and more difficult to actually get it processed?
Yeah, it had not yet been abandoned. It was just in that moment of where it had gone past its most mature point. So No, you could still get it processed in Melbourne. Film Plus was still going.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, you could still send the film off to Kodak and even to AGFA.
Uh-huh.
And AGFA is now truly defunct, but at that time that you could do that. So it was very easy, but it was almost gone. Within 5 years, those things all stopped. Film Plus hung on till about 2000, I think. Yeah. So there we are. So now you can sit back down. Okay.
That's a little bit of bit of
Yeah.
history.
Yeah. Gosh, you have to stop me. I told you, give me a microphone and I'm off.
No, it's good, and I think
But it's amazing. But it's amazing because you're talking about probably 7 years after the height of the Super 8 film group in Sydney.
Yes, well that's interesting, isn't it? Because at the moment I've been looking at that. And interestingly, I also, sort of by 98, I got really arty and I decided to go and study painting.
Right.
I worked in advertising for a couple of years, anyway. Eventually I decided to go and study painting. In that process, I found the Melbourne Super 8 group, which was possibly was in its last 2 years. It became the Melbourne Moving Image Coalition during that period. But some of the original people were still involved, not many.
Tony Woods.
Tony, yep. He was a come lately to Super 8 though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
His career in Super 8 dates from the 90s, pretty much, I think. I think
Okay.
right about that. But what's the point about that? Anyway, the Super 8 group, Moira Joseph taught me how to hand process, which is a very neat segue across to the next lighting state. Should we do that?
Let's do that.
Okay. So,
You tuned into Playful Sound. If you're at home and watching on your computer, you enjoy. We're going to go to the next station right now, right after this light change. Now,
Do that dramatic banana again.
now, we're not doing the green screen thing. Now, hold on.
we're meant to, at this point, will we...
Let me just change this around quickly. Press this. Now,
We need a...
this is what we need. Cut that out.
Beautiful.
All right, now.